Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I am here with my buddy Teddy. Let's get him a little more on the screen. He's feeling a little rambunctious right now, but we are going to talk about the shortlist for the International Booker Prize. If you follow along, you know we are in the thick of Spring Book Award season. So we have another exciting development today with the release of this shortlist. I have been having a sort of roller coaster with long lists and shortlists so far this year. I've also released my Pulitzer Prize predictions, and I'll have links to videos about all of those prizes in the description box down below if you'd like to check them out. But the interesting thing is, while long lists and now short lists like the Carol Shields Prize and the International Booker and the Women's Prize for Nonfiction have really captured my interest. I haven't started making any progress on reading them yet. And I think the main reason for that is that I am sort of going back to my Pulitzer thing. I'm kind of in the zone with that. I have been doing my predictions, as I mentioned, and trying to catch up on a couple of books that might win the Pulitzer this year. I'm doing a Pulitzer project on Geraldine Brooks's March. That's kind of been taking up a lot of my time. However, there are some really interesting books on this shortlist. I think the way things are going, I'm not really going to catch up to any of these books until after the prizes are announced. It's also been interesting because it feels like with so much going on, I've heard the most about the Women's Prize for Nonfiction. That is the prize that people have been talking about the most and really excited about and actually reading their way through. And I have not actually seen too many people reading through the International Booker Prize, at least not yet. That might change now that we have the shortlist. And I think I and a couple of other people are having off years with the Women's Prize for Fiction. And the Carol Shields Prize, I'm paying attention to it. I don't know how many other people are, but it's interesting. I haven't heard as much buzz about these, although I haven't really been seeking it out either. But if you've read any of these books, I would love to hear from you in the comment section down below. Help me narrow in on which ones I would like. So first, we're going to talk about the books that made it onto the short list. Then we'll talk about what we say goodbye to from the long list. I am not going to make a prediction about what could win. I have a thought, maybe. But, there's a dog barking out in the street, so Teddy just went to investigate. So there are some unique things about this shortlist as well. Let's talk about those before we get into the books that made the shortlist. There are 6 authors, obviously, because there are 6 books that are shortlisted for the first time. So the shortlist is entirely made up of authors who are new to the list. And this includes 3 authors that made their English language debut with this publication that they are shortlisted for. 2 of the translators have been previously shortlisted, including one who is recognized for an unprecedented 3rd time. That's pretty cool. There is a majority of women on this shortlist. 9 of the 12 nominees are female. There are titles translated from 5 original languages, including, for the first time, Kannada. It's concise but powerful storytelling with just 2 shortlisted books over 200 pages. And if you follow along, I feel like I'm having a moment with short fiction. I think right now, at least, I am more impressed with economy, with an author who is able to pack a punch into a short page count and do really magical things with it. So that is something that appeals to me. It was something that was good about the Carol Shields Prize as well. And the last note is that this is a full house for independent publishers, which is a first for the prize. So all of the shortlisted books come from independent publishers. And that is pretty cool, not gonna lie. All right, let's start talking about the 6 books that made it onto the shortlist. The first is A Leopard Skin Hat, written by Anna Serre and translated from the French by Mark Hutchinson. The story of an intense friendship between the narrator and his close childhood friend, Fanny, who suffers from profound psychological disorders. And if you're tracking the noise around me, The dog's noise kind of continued a little bit outside, so Teddy ran to the backyard to investigate. So anyway, hailed in the point as a masterpiece of simplicity, emotion, and elegance, A Leopard Skin Hat may be Anne Sayre's most moving novel yet. A series of short scenes paints the portrait of a strong-willed and tormented young woman battling many demons, and of the narrator's loving and anguished attachment to her. Sayre poignantly depicts the bewildering back and forth between hope and despair involved in such a relationship, while playfully calling into question the very form of the novel. Written in the aftermath of the death of the author's little sister, A Leopard Skin Hat is both the celebration of a tragically foreshortened life and a valedictory farewell, written in Anne Sayre's signature style. This is a book that had stood out to me from the Longlist, so I'm not entirely surprised to see it here. As I said, I haven't made moves toward reading any of the books, even the one that jumped out to me the most from the Longlist, which incidentally did not make it onto the shortlist. I have not procured copies of any. I think I did make a recommendation or two to my library to have them get a copy, and even now I haven't looked to see whatever happened with that. But this is a book that I was interested in, so I'm glad to see it on the shortlist. And I think I had also said that I was going to wait for feedback. So if you have been reading the Longlist for the International Booker Prize, let me know what you thought of Leopard Skin Hat, because this is one that I could easily be convinced to circle back to once I have a little bit more time in the second half of the year. And let me know in the comment section down below. The next finalist or shortlisted book is Heart Lamp, written by Banu Mushtaq, translated by Deepa Basti, and this is translated from Kannada. In 12 stories, Banu Mushtaq exquisitely captures the everyday lives of women and girls in Muslim communities in southern India. This is another one that had sounded interesting to me from the Longlist. Published originally in the Kannada language between 1990 and 2023, praised for their dry and gentle humor, these portraits of family and community tensions testify to Mushtaq's years as a journalist and lawyer, and in which she tirelessly championed women's rights and protested all forms of caste and religious oppression. Written in a style at once witty, vivid, colloquial, moving, and excoriating, it's in her characters, the sparky children, the audacious grandmothers, the buffoonish Malvis and thug brothers, the oft hapless husbands, and the mothers above all, surviving their feelings at great cost, that Mushtaq emerges as an astonishing writer and observer of human nature, building disconcerting emotional heights out of a rich spoken style. Her opus has garnered both censure from conservative quarters as well as India's most prestigious literary awards. This is a collection sure to be read for years to come. And I think we'll have to see when we get to the other one. I think there are two books on the short list that I would be most interested. This is one of them. And the other one, we'll kind of have to see when we get to it, because I remember being really excited about it from the long list. But when I read the description again, we'll see if it maintains that top tier status for me. But yeah, this is another one I could easily be convinced to read. The next book on the shortlist is Perfection, written by Vincenzo Latronico and translated by Sophie Hughes. A taut, spare sociological novel about the emptiness of contemporary existence, scathing and affecting in equal measure. Now, this was another fascinating book. So really, because the long list was so strong, the shortlist is by nature strong. I think you couldn't go wrong picking any of these books up because they all sound interesting. Millennial expat couple Anna and Tom are living the dream in Berlin in a bright, affordable, plant-filled apartment. Their life as young digital creatives revolves around slow cooking, Danish furniture, sexual experimentation, and the city's 24-hour party scene, an ideal existence shared by an entire generation and tantalizingly lived out on social media. But beyond the images, dissatisfaction and ennui burgeon. Work becomes repetitive. Friends move back home, have children, grow up. Frustrated that their progressive politics amount to little more in practice than boycotting Uber, tipping in cash, or never eating tuna, Anna and Tom make a fruitless attempt at political activism. Feeling increasingly trapped in their picture-perfect life, the couple takes ever more radical steps in the pursuit of an authenticity and a sense of purpose perennially beyond their grasp. I think that sense of futility and that the things that you do aren't having enough of an impact in the area that you would like to have an impact is something that a lot of us can relate to, maybe especially if you live in the United States right now or for the last decade. So this could be a little bit triggering, but it also sounds fascinating because it's about something that I think pretty much anybody living in this time can relate to, and that seems very powerful. And by the way, I didn't mention it at the top of this video, but I am not attempting to review books that I haven't read. I'm not trying to speak to the quality of them. All I'm doing is I love to use a long list, a best of list as a tool of discovery for books. So the International Booker is basically helping me discover books that I might not have discovered. So all I can talk about is my own interest in reading them. And you might have different interests in which ones you gravitate toward. That is fine. And I would actually love to hear which ones you gravitate toward in the comment section down below. So the next finalist is Under the Eye of the Big Bird, written by Hiromi Kawakami and translated by Asa Yoneda from Japanese. I forgot to mention the language that Perfection was translated from. It is translated from Italian. I had a feeling based on the name of the author, but I didn't want to assume. All right, Under the Eye of the Big Bird. An inventive and immersive speculative novel about a future in which humans are nearing extinction from the best-selling author of Strange Weather in Tokyo. Before we get into the rest, I think this was one of 3 books, mostly the other 2, that I was a little hesitant about. And not that I was outright disinterested in anything from the long list, but there were 3 books that I particularly was thinking, that's probably the bottom of the totem pole or rung of the ladder for me. And 2 of those books made it onto the shortlist. This is the first. And, of the 2 that made it onto the shortlist, I think I would be more likely to read this one than the other one, which we will get to soon. Here's the description of this book. In the distant future, humans are on the verge of extinction and have settled in small tribes across the planet under the observation and care of the mothers. Some children are made in factories from cells of rabbits and dolphins. Some live by getting nutrients from water and light, like plants. The survival of the race depends on the interbreeding of these and other alien beings, but it is far from certain that connection, love, reproduction, and evolution will persist among the inhabitants of this faltering new world. Unfolding over geological eons, Under the Eye of the Big Bird is at once an astonishing vision of the end of our species as we know it and a meditation on the qualities that, for better or worse, make us human. And I think the thing that makes me a little bit hesitant is mostly that I don't really do speculative fiction, climate fiction, things like that. It trends in a direction that is sort of outside my typical reading area. And I think it's important to get outside of your typical reading area. It's important to get out of your comfort zone every now and then. But when I do, I like to be thoughtful about it. So if you think this is a book that is worth me pushing outside of my comfort zone for, let me know in the comments, because I'm not opposed to it. I could be convinced to read it, but I'm a little hesitant just because it deals with things I don't typically read. Now we get to the other one that I was really excited about from the long list. Small Boat, written by Vincent Delecroix, translated by Helen Stevenson from French. So we'll see if my interest level stays the same as it was off of the long list. Again, the book that I was most excited about from the long list didn't make it onto this short list. So we'll see if this one is still in that sort of top tier of books that I was interested in. November 2021, an inflatable dinghy carrying migrants from France to the UK capsizes in the Channel, causing the deaths of 27 people on board. How and why did it happen? Despite receiving numerous calls for help, the French authorities wrongly told the migrants they were in British waters and had to call the British authorities for help. By the time rescue vessels arrived on the scene, all but 2 of the migrants had died. The narrator of Delecroix's fictional account of the events is the woman who took the calls. Accused of failing in her duty, she refuses to be held more responsible than others for this disaster. Why should she be more responsible than the sea, than the war, than the crises behind these tragedies? A shocking moral tale of our times, Small Boat reminds us of the power of fiction to illuminate our darkest crimes. And I think one of the things that makes this so interesting to me, by the way, yes, it still really catches my interest. So I would say this and A Leopard Skin Hat, or possibly Heart Lamp, maybe Heart Lamp, are the ones that I would be most likely to read. I think because especially in the United States, but also in Europe, people are so concerned with a migrant crisis, and there are a lot of moral implications to that, and it leads to a lot of mistakes and bad behavior from people who are looking to curb this crisis, and that makes this book sound really interesting to me. Now, at the time that I did my Longlist reaction, Small Boat was not available in the United States. At this time, I didn't see it available in print on Bookshop. There are affiliate links to all of the books that are available in the United States down below. I did see an ebook on Bookshop. So hopefully that means that, because we have the ebook now, maybe we'll be getting a print copy soon. So really what I need to decide is if I need to get over my aversion to ebooks in order to read this book, or if I want to order it from overseas or something like that, because that's something we can easily do these days. But Small Boat is definitely something I would be very curious to read. And we'll talk about that next bit in a minute. Let's just jump to the final book on the shortlist, which is On the Calculation of Volume 1. When I did the long list, I assumed the title was On the Calculation of Volume 1. It's On the Calculation of Volume 1 because there are going to be more. So I made a mistake. Anyway, this is written by Solveig Ballet, translated by Barbara J. Haviland from Danish. In the first part of Solveig Ballet's epic septology, Tara Selter has slipped out of time. Every morning she wakes up to the 18th of November. So I might as well tell you right now, before we get into the full description, that this is the other book on the shortlist that I had been a bit hesitant about. Part of that is the description, which we'll get into in a moment, and part of it is that it's the first of a planned septology. I am not someone who likes to get, I was going to say bogged down, but that's kind of an unfair word. I just am a little bit leery of series. I like to spread the wealth a little bit, for the most part. I sometimes, like Abby Jimenez, escapist read. I will read that series and go back to it throughout the year. But for the most part, I like to have a little bit of freedom to flit around from this to that and do my thing. So the fact that it's the first of its septology kind of makes me hesitant to take a step in. So if you think I should get over that, let me know in the comment section down below. Here's the description. She no longer expects to wake up to the 19th of November, and she no longer remembers the 17th of November as if it were yesterday. She comes to know the shape of the day like the back of her hand, the gray morning light in her Paris hotel, the moment a blackbird breaks into song, her husband's surprise at seeing her return home unannounced. But for everyone around her, this day is lived for the first and only time. They do not remember the other 18ths of November, and they do not believe her when she tries to explain. As Tara approaches her 365th 18th of November, she can't shake the feeling that somewhere underneath the surface of this day, there's a way to escape. On the Calculation of Volume 1 is the first book of a planned septology. 5 books have been published in Danish so far, with translations underway in over 20 countries. And it does sound interesting. I definitely gravitate more in the direction of certainly Small Boat, certainly Heart Lamp, and A Leopard Skin Hat. and Perfection. I'd say those are the 4 books that I am most interested in. And just for the sake of wildly throwing out an irresponsible prediction, maybe I'm biased because it's the book I'm most interested in, but I feel like Small Boat would make a really great winner. And it's difficult to say without having actually read the books. So this is where I'm sort of stepping into dangerous territory. But going off of vibes, and there's a big plane going by overhead. Hopefully you can't hear it. It feels like Small Boat would be, to use cliched terms, timely and urgent, send a big political message. But it also sounds like a really great book. So again, it's difficult to say without having read them. But I feel like if you told me, all right, you have to make a prediction right now, I would probably predict Small Boat and go from there. So, what do we say goodbye to from the long list? The one that hurts me is On a Woman's Madness by Astrid Romer, translated by Lucy Scott from Dutch. This is a book that was originally published in 1982, and it was just translated now, which is why it had been eligible for the International Booker. It's a classic of queer literature, and it had me very interested. It was the book that I was most interested in off of the long list. Obviously, I have not taken any steps to get a copy or anything like that, but I think this is one that I had recommended to my library, and I need to check on the status of that. So it is still something that I would really like to read. I'm a little sad it didn't continue onto the shortlist, but I'm glad that the long list introduced me to that book, because it's definitely still something that I would like to catch up whenever I feel like I have a little bit more time and leeway and I'm not working on Pulitzer things or anything like that, as I will be in the first half of the year. But I would really like to catch up to it. We also say goodbye to Eurotrash, written by Christian Kracht, translated by Daniel Bowles from German. That was another one that sounded interesting. I feel like with the shortlist being as strong as it is, it's hard for me to say that I would feel disappointed. The only book I feel like, just because I was so excited about On a Woman's Madness, that's the only one that I would say I probably would have liked to see move forward, because especially without having read some of these books, it's difficult to say what you would take out. But it's just a strong list. And when you have a strong list, books that sound interesting get left behind. And that's one of the things that's happening here. And you could say the same thing about Hunchback by Sao Ichikawa, translated by Polly Barton from Japanese. That sounded quirky, so I guess I'm not all that surprised to see it fall by the wayside, but it still sounded really interesting. So I think one of the other ones alongside On a Woman's Madness that burns just a little bit to see not advance is Reservoir Bitches by Dalia de la Cerda, translated by Julia Sanchez and Heather Cleary from Spanish. That is something that had sounded really interesting to me and that I would like to continue to seek out. Solenoid was the third book that I was a little hesitant about. A lot of people have loved the book, and that's not to take anything away from that. It's just that it doesn't sound like something I would particularly enjoy. So for that reason, it sounds like dense and heavy, and it talks about philosophy a lot, and I'm not super into philosophy. So it makes it a little bit difficult. We also say goodbye to There's a Monster Behind the Door by Gaëlle Bélem, translated by Karen Fleetwood and Laetitia Saint-Lubert from French. Honestly, I have to be honest with you, I actually don't remember what that one is about, which is probably not a good sign because I do have memories of all of the other books. Does that mean it shouldn't have advanced? I don't know. But I admit I don't remember what that book was about. The final book that did not make it onto the shortlist is The Book of Disappearance by Ibtizim Azem, translated by Sinan Antoun from Arabic. And this one, this is where it's difficult to try to go on vibes and think about, politics and timely stuff, because given that this has, I believe this is about Palestine and Israel. Yeah, the headline is, "What if all the Palestinians in Israel simply disappeared one day?" It felt like, based on politics and current events, this might be a book that the jury would want to advance and keep in the conversation. But that's not always the way juries think, and that's a good thing. But it's both a blessing and a curse, I guess, because it is good to have books presented to you. It's not good when it is done in a clumsy and sort of ham-handed way, like I would say happened when The Testaments co-won the Booker Prize, and it just felt like people on that jury for the Booker that year were just not going to let it go. So anyway, those are the books we say goodbye to, and ultimately, it was just a really interesting long list for the International Booker Prize this year, and I would absolutely like to catch up to some of these books, and particularly On a Woman's Madness, Reservoir Bitches, Small Boat, probably Heartlamp, and if there's time, Leopard Skin Hat. But those are the ones that I would prioritize. Let me know if you think I'm overlooking something in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think of this shortlist and all of that good stuff in the comment section down below. And as always, I really appreciate your time. I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.